and welcome to another Rendaa Studio After Effects tutorial. I'm MAKC, and today we're going to be taking a look at this circular light design. Let's take a look. So we'll start off, of course, with a new composition. The original was designed at 1080p. We'll just use 960. By 540. What happened there? Okay. 15 seconds good. And tutorial. First thing first, we need to create some new lights. The way we create new lights, layer, new light. And we're going to want to use the point light. I don't know if that's actually the default for After Effects now. I know it used to be, but whatever, just switch it to point. And we want to name this emitter. With our light, create a new layer, that's Command Y, and then hit the anchor point, and it will give you the exact center of the composition. Point here we have 480 by 720, which is the exact middle of the composition. Our position on our light is already set to 480. So we'll just set it to 270. And we're going to copy and paste 8 copies. So when this hits 9, we'll know we have 8 copies of the layer. And what we need to do, actually really quickly, is just remove the numbers from these, as Trapcode particular only picks up on lights called emitter. Alright, so once we have all of our lights renamed, what we want to do is move these to proportionate spaces throughout the comp. So what we want to do is bring up the position on all these, and we need to set them some keyframes. So as you saw in the original, what happens is our particles start off really close and move out throughout the design, and then right at the end they kind of spread like wildfire and shoot off quite a bit further. So let's try and recreate that as best as possible. So to start off, we're going to move our first light, say 10 points away. So 470, that'll be 10 pixels away. And we'll set a keyframe. And then we'll say, as our comp moves on at about 12 seconds, we're going to want our value to be, say, 50 pixels away from the center point. So that'll be 430. And then at the very end, as it shoots away, we'll have it go to maybe 400. So a full 80 points away. And so now we can see that's been more or less recreated on one side of the system. So what we need to do is recreate this 9 times or 8 times. And so let's get started. We're going to hit tilde again. Remember, that's a button above the tab key. And open some of these up. And so to start off, what we'll do is move each particle 10 points in any direction. So right here we have this particle going out to the left, and it's going out 10 pixels. So to start off, we'll move this one out 490. To go down, we will leave the 480 value alone and change the 270 value to be 260 and 280. Now the diagonal is where it's a little bit tricky. The way I did it was just moving each value 5 pixels, the 480 and 720, 5 pixels rather than moving one of the values 10. So to create our diagonals, what we'll do is say we want to move this 485 for these two and 475 for these two. And same thing with the other. We're just going to be moving the 270, 275 here, and 265 here. Whoops, 265. Be careful with those numbers. And again, 265 on one, and 275 on one. And again, keyframe all four of those values. Now we get to move to our keyframe at 12. Okay, and now with this 12-second, what we want to do is have all of them be moved out 50 pixels instead. So same idea applied. We're moving 50 pixels away from the center point, which is 480 by 720. So for our right, we'll move 480 away from, we'll move 50 pixels away from 480, which is going to be 530. And again, same thing here. You can think of it as actually just moving it 40 pixels instead. That might make it easier to keep track of what you've done. And then 320. So if we just jump out of this Attila view real quick, we can see what's happening so far. I just like to do that to make sure I'm not screwing anything up too bad while I'm down here working. It is a little bit hard to see what you're doing when you're just working with numbers. So again, we'll just be moving each of these values 20 pixels away. So 505 and 505. Next, 455 and 455. And then the two values here are going to be 295 for the 275s, 295, and then for 265 that will change to 245. So finally, our last keyframe is where we're going to want all of our pixels to move out, in which case here it ended up moving out 80 pixels. We would go up to 560, I believe. Yes, okay. Sorry, I needed to check that. And then again, we'll just be adding or subtracting 30 relative to what it's been doing this whole time. So 190 and 350. Add on 15, we'll make these 520 by 520. And then 440 and 440 and 230. Got it. 230 and 310. Okay, so finally we have these done. If we hit P, we can close all those keyframes. And now if we take a look, we have that movement. Now the only other thing that we need to do is keyframe the Z position for all of these, and that's relatively simple compared to what we've been doing, but we'll just take the left point, we'll look at it from the left view, come to the very last frame, and have these all move forward on their respective Z position to the end of this comp. And if we take a look now, it's just going to be a constant Z movement. Very easy to keep track of. Okay, so now we have these all keyframe moving up the Z position, and the next step is going to be to go ahead and create our camera move. Now, the one thing to keep in mind with this camera is to use a fairly high focal length. The reason why is because if you use a low focal length, it picks up a lot on the perspective of the particles as we're zooming through them, and it's kind of hard to work with. So if you do it with a low focal length, that's perfectly fine. Again, just experimentation. Might find that you like the way it looks and create something cool with it. But if you do that, you'll see what I mean. But for this example, we're sticking to a high focal length of 135 or 200 millimeters. Okay, so first thing we want to do with our camera is start to keyframe the basic camera move. We'll start off about here with our particles, and if we hit P, well, hang on, probably a better idea to just bring down the entire box and keyframe position and point of interest. And if we come through we have our camera, and if we come to the very end, basically what we're going to want to happen is it's now going to be, our lights are going to be on the outsides of the frames. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we can just add our quick rotation keyframe. It's the Z rotation we want to rotate on. And I just added an expression. I used time star or times star. And I used 100 last time. I thought that was a little bit fast, so I'll try 50 now. And now, if we take a look, we can see what's going on with these particles. Really quick tip for when you're working with a whole lot of layers: if you select them all, hit this little shy switch, just hide them. And that's going to come in handy for our lights and our particles later on, whenever we just want to get everything done and start grading this and, you know, finish it. To create our particles, first thing we want to do, layer, new, solid. And we will name this particles. Particular particles. Okay, now this is where we get to use Trapcode particular. And very easy to find that. Come over and type in particular or layer. Whoops. Excuse me, effect. I don't know why I said layer. Effect Trapcode particular. Once inside of particular, what we want to do is go ahead and take the not particle, emitter settings and change them to light or lights. And if everything's set up, booyah. So let's clean up this mess a little bit. First things first, all of our numbers to 0. Interesting. The next thing we want to do is scale down these particles as they're humongous right now. So we'll set the size from 5 to about 0.5. Okay. So now we have a straight line set up, which is very boring, not what we want. If we take a look at the original particle shoot composition, just in its most simple form, we can see our lines are very wavy, spiderwebby, just a lot more fun to mess with, and you know, a lot more interesting of a design, more disorganized and mechanical. You know, Transformers is a terrible movie, but you know, that's what it reminds me of. So to get that nice organic look, what we'll do is we'll close up this particle category and come to physics, and we want to turn on an option called Turbulence Field. And what we just want to do with this is turn up the scale. And you can see instantly as we turn up the scale in our design, it goes insane. 5 to 10 is probably more than enough for this design. And so what we want to do now is just pick a random frame where we want to start copying these from. Because believe it or not, that's actually all we do to particular. It's very easy to set up. Once we get the light set up, it's very easy to just, you know, start adding stuff and make this design absolutely insane. So, you know, let's do that. That sounds fun. So, let's get to the rotation part of this design. We're just going to start making copies and rotating them. And so what we can actually do is go ahead and shy these particles like our light layers and get them out of here. So like I said, we used a texture from Video Copilot to add some more depth to this shot. So we'll just go ahead and add that and get it out of the way. I know it seems like everyone on the internet is always using stuff from them, but you know, if they just stop making stuff that everyone wants to use, you know, we wouldn't have this problem. It's their fault, not ours. And we just want to change the blending mode to screen. Could have seen that coming, right? And we'll start to scale at that much. And we'll finish it at 100%, obviously. And you'll notice that there is, the frame is going to be overlapping on this lens, and that's pretty easy to fix. All I did was create a quick black solid and then did a mask, elliptical mask from the center and then out to let's see, if we do subtract and then feather it maybe 4 pixels and then put it below our lens texture, it almost acts as kind of like a luma mat for our particles, as we obviously can't use one luma mat for that many layers. So let's see, if we just take the mask path, if we bring up the mask path, we can keyframe it to fit to this, and that should make it pretty easy to add that depth we were looking for. Alright, perfect. Okay, so now we're 100% done with our design. All we have left to do is color grading and of course adding our text and really just stylizing it. So this is the fun part where the artist part of motion graphics artist comes into play. So we'll add some text real quick. So we'll call this circle design. So if we just add some fade in points, keyframes on the opacity, we'll have our text kind of fade in. Okay, so next up is the grading part, the fun. And I just like to create new layers and then hit the adjustment layer button over here. You can come up to layer, new, and then adjustment layer. It's just a preference of mine. And to start off, what we'll do is add a couple of glows. We're going to want to use different colors in order to start giving off that warm vibe that we want. And so we'll just change these to some nice orangish yellows, something like that. And we're going to want to switch the glow colors to the A and B colors, of course. And you can start to see some of that warmness coming through. We'll change the glow threshold to about 50% or so. Intensity, maybe 0.5 or 7-ish. Okay. Radius, 100, maybe. Okay. And so now we have a nice kind of overall tone to the image. One thing I did in the original whenever I was first setting up the color is I took an exposure control. Let's see. Exposure. And I just set the exposure to about -1. And that tones down the color a little bit and allows us to focus more on the glow of this center point. So let's do that. Okay, so let's make a copy of this glow. If we hit Command C, we can copy it and then just paste it back on. Okay, so now we'll get an exact copy of that glow. Let's bring this down a little bit to about 1/4 of the size. So now, if we give this a second to load, we should get a pretty cool design. Okay, so we've got a nice starting point here. And you'll see there is a little bit of a hot spot. And you'll notice there is a little bit of weird glow picking up on the lens. If that continues to be an issue, you can always just take an exposure control and put it on that lens and just tone it down even more than it is. So, negative, let's say, -0.5. Okay, so, alright, so that's the first grading layer. And now what I'll do is I'll just add another one so that we can intensify this quite a bit. So, what I'll do is take a nice hue and saturation control, And what I'm going to do is just bring up the master saturation until I think that it is orange enough, which is going to be quite high. Alright, so now we've got that nice warm color pool that we really want. And the final thing that I did to this design was I added some film grain to it. One, just because you'll notice there are a lot of blacks in this design, and you'll notice a lot when in a design when there's a lot of solid black, it gets a little bit boring to look at. And so one way that I like to counter that is to just add some nice film grain to it, also because I just really do like the look of film grain. And After Effects does have a decent plugin for doing it. If you really want to get it looking good, you can use Film Convert, and if you haven't used that, that's a great plugin. There's a desktop app and a plugin. But what we'll do here is, let's see, if we come in and really look close at this, we can see the grain that it's adding with and without this effect. We can see what it's doing, and you can see it just adds some nasty kind of Super 8 looking grain. And so if we change this to an actual film stock, for example Vision 250D, none of these are like very modern presets. This one's pretty close. The 250D and the 500D they look like Vision 2, not Vision 3, but whatever. We can see it will add some nice 35mm looking grain. Very, very nice. You can tone it down just by messing with the intensity and the color. I like to desaturate it just a little bit. I don't like the really heavy red and green of the film grain, but that look good. And so you'll notice it does add a very nice texture to these black areas we were talking about. If we take a look really quickly with and without the grain, if you focus here, you can see the black is very dull and it gets boring to look at, but just adding that texture can make it a little bit more interesting and just keep the audience focused, and you won't see as many of the seams, but anyways, I'm Mackenzie Criswell. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned something. You can view more great ones at rendastudios.com.